If you are looking for some great single-player games to play on your PS5, this list is for you. So let's look at the first game on our list. God of War Ragnarok. First off, this game is a masterpiece, no doubt about it. It takes everything the previous God of War did and cranks it up to 11. The combat feels way more satisfying with the Blades of Chaos and Leviathan Axe feeling better than ever, and also, the new weapon, the spear, is an absolute game changer. In my opinion, it adds another layer of depth, and we all know that a shield and spear were the first two weapons that a Spartan soldier first gets. So it also adds a charm of nostalgia. Now let's talk about boss fights, one of the biggest upgrades from 2018. There are so many of them, and they are brutal in the best way possible. These fights are cinematic and straight up legendary. If you ask me, then the sheer increase in the number of boss battles is crazy, because no matter what, as players who love Kratos, we will never say no to another cinematic fight where he tears apart monstrous creatures or stupid gods. So this gives us another chance to enjoy what Kratos is mostly known for, an ultra-powerful, savage beast capable of doing the most impossible things. However, if you asked me, then in the Norse saga, Kratos is turning into more of a father figure. There are so many moments of him with his son and with other characters that showcase his anger management and helpful advice, so he's not the same ghost of Sparta we knew. This is still a good thing as we get to see different sides of Kratos and experience an overall wholesome story. Ragnarok is a stunning game. Every realm feels alive, and exploring them is just as rewarding as fighting through them. Finally, the ending of the game wraps up the Norse saga in a way that feels earned, emotional, and full of epic moments that will stay with you long after the credits roll.
He's not protecting us. Magni, Modi, our boys.
Spider-Man 2. This is just peak superhero gaming. If you thought Insomniac nailed it with the first game, this one takes everything up a notch. The swinging is insanely smooth. Like, I spent hours just zipping through the city, pulling off tricks, using the web wings and catching that New York sunset mid-flight. It feels so damn good that fast travel almost feels unnecessary. The little details, the NPCs, it all adds to that immersive experience. Side missions are actually worth doing, with some deep storytelling elements and surprises. Both Peter and Miles have their own styles, and switching between them mid-story keeps things fresh. Peter's symbiote abilities make him feel like a total beast, while Miles' bioelectric powers are straight up deadly. Loki, Kraven, and Venom steals the show. We all know that the boss fights are electrifying. I mean, even before the release of the game, all of us pretty excited to see Venom. It was after such a long time that we got to see him in a Spidey game, and honestly the feeling was beyond satisfying. Big thanks to Insomniac. Anyways, if we talk about the storyline, then it's quite deep and emotional, just like the first game, but way more refined. The Peter-Miles dynamic is top tier, and seeing Pete struggle with the symbiote while Miles grows into his own Spidey role is just chef's kiss. They really went all in on the cinematic storytelling, and some moments hit hard. The game isn't 100% perfect, but it's so damn close. Some missions are a bit basic, and I wish there were more suits with crazy gameplay effects, but overall, it's a must-play if you love open-world action or just want to feel like Spider-Man. If you're even slightly into Spidey, this game is an absolute no-brainer.
Do the spider and retrieve Lee. If you're not,
Ghost of Tsushima. This is one of those games that just sticks with you. It's not just about the combat or the story, it's the whole damn experience. The moment you start the open world journey, you're hit with this insane level of atmosphere. The way the wind guides you instead of a mini-map, the way leaves scatter as you ride through the golden fields of Tsushima. Every little detail makes the world feel alive. Combat is where the game really shines. It's so fluid, so satisfying, whether you're cutting down Mongols with precise sword strikes or stealthily picking them off like a ghost. Every fight feels cinematic. There's nothing more badass than calling out an enemy, waiting for that perfect moment, and slicing them down in one move. And let's talk about the story. Jin's struggle between honor and necessity, between being a samurai and becoming the ghost, it's such a well done character arc. You feel every decision weighing on him, especially when it comes to his relationship with Lord Shimura. It's easily one of the most beautiful open worlds ever made, just pure exploration with visual cues leading you to secrets. And I gotta say, the Legends mode was a surprise hit. I didn't expect the multiplayer to be that good, but it ended up being one of the best co-op experiences out there. The game makes you feel like a damn samurai, and every moment feels like it belongs in a classic Kurosawa film. One of the best open world games ever.
You have no honor.
and you are a slave to it.
Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Alright, let's talk about this classic fantasy remake. If you played the first part, you already know that this isn't just a simple retelling of the original, it's a full-blown reimagining that takes everything we loved about Final Fantasy VII and cranks it up to 11. Unlike Remake, which was mostly confined to Midgar, Rebirth throws you into sprawling open zones that are packed with side quests, secrets, and jaw-dropping scenery. Absolute nostalgia trip, but with stunning modern visuals that make it feel brand new. Combat is even better this time around. If you liked the action-heavy approach of Remake but wanted more depth, you're gonna love this. The synergy moves between characters add a whole new layer to fights, making every encounter feel strategic and cinematic at the same time. Every major fight feels like an event, packed with insane mechanics and set-piece moments that left me grinning like an idiot half the time. Rebirth goes places. If you thought Remake was messing with expectations, this one cranks up the mind games big time. It's got those unexpected twists and some seriously bold changes that will have longtime fans debating for years. The character interactions feel more fleshed out than ever, with moments that made me laugh and even sit there in total silence processing what just happened. If you loved Remake, Rebirth is basically a dream come true. It's bigger, bolder, and an emotional roller coaster from start to finish.
Yeah. Following the river should get us back to the village.
We're not going to the village. Can you get us to the reactor?
Last of Us Remake. This is basically the definitive way to experience Joel and Ellie's journey, especially if you never played the original. The PS5 version takes the already incredible story and brings it to modern standards with insane graphical improvements. It's still the same game at its core, no drastic gameplay changes, but the combat is smoother and everything just feels better. Every scene is more detailed, every expression more lifelike. You'll feel desperation, fear, and tiny glimpses of hope even more intensely. If you've played the original, this is more of a polished masterpiece rather than a reinvented experience. Now, Part 2 is a whole different beast. It just doesn't continue the storyline, it forces you into some of the most intense and emotionally charged experiences of gaming. You're gonna love some parts, hate others, and probably sit in silence after finishing it, just thinking about everything that happened. Naughty Dog went all in on pushing the boundaries of storytelling, making you question morality and perspective in ways most games wouldn't dare. And it's darker, longer, and way more ambitious than the first game. Whether you like the story direction or not, one thing's for sure, this game demands a reaction. And that's what makes it unforgettable. If you're new to The Last of Us, start with Part 1. It's a masterpiece, and if you're ready for something heavier, Part 2 is waiting. Either way, both games deliver some of the best storytelling, characters, and gameplay you'll ever experience. Stellar Blade. Stellar Blade is an absolute banger of an action game. It's like if Nier, Automata, Sekiro, and Devil May Cry had a futuristic anime-stylized baby. The combat is fast, fluid, and incredibly satisfying. Parrying feels so damn good when you time it right, and the boss fights will have you sweating bullets. If you love tight, skill-based action games, this one delivers. The game mixes sci-fi and post-apocalyptic vibes with some seriously breathtaking set pieces. The story is a bit mysterious at first, but as you progress, it unfolds in a way that keeps you hooked. There's a surprising amount of depth in the lore, and if you're into uncovering secrets, you'll find plenty to chew on. And let's talk about the protagonist. She's badass, stylish, and an absolute powerhouse in combat. The way she moves, fights, and interacts with the world makes her feel like a true action hero. Plus, the game doesn't just focus on mindless action, there are moments of exploration, side activities, and even some emotional beats that hit harder than expected. Honestly, Stellar Blade is a must-play game, because after a while, we have gotten a brand new, best ever, similar to Bayonetta game. A game that focuses on a gorgeous character and then mixes it with a fast-paced, stylish combat. So yes, it's definitely a nice game to play, especially on PS5. Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. The game is an absolute banger, with the coolest dimension hopping and some of the smoothest animations I've ever seen in a platformer. It feels like playing a Pixar movie, but with insane weapons and non-stop action. Speaking of weapons, Rift Apart does not disappoint in that department. If you've played any Ratchet and Clank game before, you know about how the game handles the weapons department. There are creative guns that just get more ridiculous as they upgrade. You literally turn enemies into bushes and then blast them. It feels so satisfying. Speaking of satisfaction, the gameplay is fun as hell. The combat is punchy, the movement is slick, and the rift mechanic adds a fresh twist. 1 second, you're fighting in a futuristic city, and the next, you're yanked into a completely different world with zero lag. It's totally wild. The whole narrative is surprisingly engaging, balancing humor with some heartfelt moments. If I had to nitpick, I'd say it's a bit on the easy side, especially if you're a veteran of the series. But honestly, that doesn't even matter. The game is a blast from start to finish, and it's one of the best showcases of what the PS5 can do. If you have a PS5, you owe it to yourself to play this. Also, some of you probably got this game with the bundle when you first purchased your PS5.
Your suit seems to be working.
Death Stranding. Death Stranding is one of those games that you either vibe with or drop within the first few hours. It's weird and sometimes straight up depressing, but in the best way possible. You're actually a delivery guy in a post-apocalyptic world where America has basically fallen apart. Your main purpose in the game is to reconnect isolated cities by literally walking across empty landscapes while carrying cargo on your back like the world's most determined Amazon delivery guy. Let's be real, this isn't your typical action-packed, shoot everything that moves kind of game. It's all about traversal, planning routes, and making sure you don't trip over a damn rock and send your precious cargo flying down a cliff. But somehow the game makes even that feel intense. The moment you start getting good at balancing your load, managing your stamina, and using tools like ladders and ropes, you feel like an absolute pro. But what makes Death Stranding special is how it connects players. The game has this cool online system where you don't directly interact with others, but you can leave ladders, bridges, and signs that help fellow travelers. It gives you this weird sense of comrade, like you're not really alone out there. Bottom line is that if you love atmosphere-heavy games with a deep story and don't mind the slow gameplay, Death Stranding is an experience you won't forget. But if you're looking for constant action and fast-paced combat, this might not be for you. It's not a game for everyone, but for the right player, it's unforgettable. Demon's Souls. This game on PS5 is an absolute masterpiece. If you played any Souls game before, you already know what to expect. Brutal difficulty, insane combat, and that overwhelming sense of satisfaction when you finally take down a boss that's been stomping you into the ground. But this remake is something else. The first thing that hits you is the visuals. Blue Point Games didn't just remaster the original, they rebuilt it from the ground up, and it looks stunning. Gameplay-wise, it sticks to the classic formula, slow and deliberate combat where every mistake is punished. You can't just hack and slash your way through enemies, you have to read their movements, time your dodges, and make every hit count. Some bosses are a little easier than later Souls games, but they still pack a punch. However, some of them, such as the Flammelurker, Maneater, and Old King, will humble you so fast, making you realize that you shouldn't forget that you're actually playing a Souls game. Overall, if you love Souls games, this is a must-play. It's a rewarding experience that'll test your patience and skill. That feeling when you conquer it is absolutely legendary. Honestly, if you're in the mood to experience a Souls-like adventure, but you do want to experience it with the fantastic visuals of PS5, then Demon's Souls is the game you're looking for. Sure, there are games out there like Elden Ring and Lies of P, but in my opinion, if you want to play something similar to Dark Souls, then this game is the perfect choice, because it has been reinvented for the purpose of giving the players an amazing Souls-like PS5 experience. Rise of the Ronin. This is actually a controversial game. Before its release, most of us were pretty excited for it because we thought we would be getting a similar to Ghost of Tsushima experience. However, the game sort of disappointed us. Let's just say that it didn't feel like a proper samurai ninja game as per modern gaming standards. Lots of things could have been improved. Even a game such as Ghost of Tsushima that was released earlier than this has better features and experiences. Anyways, if we forget about everything and just look at this game from a newbie perspective, someone who wants to just play another AA samurai game, then Rise of Ronin is definitely a great choice. Even with its issues, Ronin is a pretty game as it still delivers an engaging adventure combined with some of the craziest tools. The combat is top notch. It's a satisfying mix of swordplay and strategic moves, especially when you find the rhythm of your katana strikes, parries, and dodges. The martial arts system lets you choose how to fight, whether you're all about the quick, graceful strikes or the more methodical, heavy hits that pack a punch. But what really sets it apart is how you can switch stances, adjusting your style to how the battle plays out. But it's about being adaptable adaptable, and that's something I really appreciate in action combat games. The RPG elements are solid too. There's a bunch of customization from weapons to skill trees, so you can really tailor your playstyle to your liking. You can upgrade your gear, level up your abilities, and make decisions that change how the world reacts to you. It's not just about fighting, it's about making choices that impact your journey. The game has its moments of brutal difficulty, especially during boss fights, but that challenge is part of what makes Rise of Ronin so rewarding. Star Wars Jedi Survivor. This really took everything I loved about Fallen Order and kicked it up a notch. You're still running, jumping, and slashing your way through the galaxy, but the combat feels smoother, with new abilities and skill trees that make you feel like a true Jedi. What really stood out to me was the way the world feels alive. There's just so much to explore, the different planets are visually stunning, and they all feel unique, each with its own set of challenges. And speaking of challenges, the combat's even more refined. You've got a mix of lightsaber styles, and the new stances really let you tailor your playstyle. Plus, the lightsaber combat is fast and satisfying, especially when you string together combos that look straight out of a Star Wars movie. The game does a great job of showing how the galaxy's turmoil affects the characters, especially the protagonists' struggle to keep the light of hope alive. I also really appreciated how much customization was added, from lightsaber hilt designs to outfits. You're actually giving a personal touch to an already immersive experience. The overall pace of the game was solid too, balancing intense action with quieter moments. Jedi Survivor is an easy recommendation for anyone who's a fan of Star Wars or great action-adventure games. If you loved Fallen Order, this is pretty much a must-play, and if you've never played either, you're in for a treat. It's a great mix of Star Wars lore, cinematic storytelling, and satisfying gameplay. Silent Hill 2 Remake. This is actually the best possible remake of the 2001 classic horror game, and it also brings a fresh, terrifying experience for both old fans and newcomers. The town of Silent Hill is now more detailed and atmospheric than ever before, with the haunting mist rolling through the streets, creating an almost suffocating tension. The characters look more lifelike too, and the facial expressions and voice acting are leagues ahead of what we saw in the original. The protagonist feels like a real person now, caught in his own twisted journey through grief and guilt. The sound design also stands out. The original game's soundtrack was already iconic, and the remake brings it back with a more immersive soundscape. There's a definite emphasis on survival horror here, ammo is scarce, and every encounter is nerve-wracking, but not in a cheap jump scare kind of way. The horror here isn't just in the monsters, it's in the psychological aspects, the twisted symbolism that Silent Hill 2 is so well known for. The game still makes you question what's real and what's in James's mind. What really shines in this remake is the way it handles the themes of the original. The story is as unsettling as ever, with James's internal struggle taking center stage. It's still a journey of grief, punishment, and redemption. You really get the sense that James is drowning in his thoughts and memories, and the town, the monsters, and the whole experience reflect that. Silent Hill 2 Remake feels like a love letter to the original, but with enough upgrades and tweaks to make it a fully realized, next-gen horror experience. If you're new to Silent Hill, this remake is a perfect introduction to one of the best psychological horror games ever made. Cyberpunk 2077. The first thing that hits you is how alive the world feels. People are everywhere, tech is in your face, and the sound design is just wild. Like, you can hear everything from the hum of a neon sign to the distant sirens as you're walking down the street. What makes it stand out is how you interact with the world and the choices you make. It's not just about running through missions, it's about the little things, the conversations, the side stories, and how those things can change the whole game. Combat is smooth, especially when you're messing around with cyberware and hacking enemies. The gunplay feels tight, but I really dug how you can mix in stealth or even take a techier approach, disabling cameras or hacking enemy systems. What's cool is you can go for different builds, making each playthrough feel a little different. You could go full street samurai with melee combat, or be this super hacker who messes with everyone's brains. I gotta admit, the bugs and performance issues when it launched were tough, but after the patches, the game's much more solid now. There's just so much depth in every corner of Night City. You can spend hours just wandering around, talking to NPCs, or driving down the highways with that awesome soundtrack blasting. Honestly, Cyberpunk 2077 is one of those games that you can sink hundreds of hours into and still find new things. Cyberpunk is one of those games that has everything in it. I believe that if any newcomer decides to play the game now, will surely have an amazing blast. Some of my favorite features about Cyberpunk is its futuristic city, which amazes me as it looks insanely livelier. Another one would be customization. The game literally provides you with a tremendous number of options to customize your character. There are also other types of enhancements such as mods and attachments to weapons. Horizon Forbidden West. This is a breathtaking sequel that truly builds on everything Horizon Zero Dawn established. The world is even bigger and it feels more alive, and each area has its own personality and story to tell. The attention to detail in the environment is insane. Every plant, animal, and machine feels like it belongs in this world. The combat is a massive highlight. If you loved taking down massive machines in the first game, you're in for a treat. The new tools and weapons like the shield wing, which lets you glide, and the spear upgrades add a fresh layer of strategy to the mix. The machines themselves are smarter too, especially the flying ones, and they keep you on your toes, requiring you to use different tactics to take them down. Aloy's character growth is one of the most rewarding aspects. She's still the determined and smart warrior we loved, but you get to see her struggle with the weight of her responsibilities and the fallout of her actions. The game really does a good job of tying in the personal stakes with the apocalyptic world that's falling apart. The way they expand on the different tribes and the internal politics adds a nice layer of depth to the world. It's not perfect. There are moments where the side quests feel a little repetitive, but overall, it's a journey that's easy to lose yourself in. The mix of combat, exploration, and story in Horizon Forbidden West is something that's hard to find elsewhere, and it's definitely a game worth playing if you loved the first one. I'm not going to talk about which one is better, as some people really appreciate the sequel while some think that it's basically a graphical overhaul. I won't recommend diving into the sequel before the original because you won't feel more connected to the storyline and the overall game's environment. Before I reveal my final pick, here are some honorable mentions. Uncharted Legacy of Thieves Collection.
That would be my dad, actually. I'm just a thief. I'll find the tusk. Asav's on you.
Nadine's guys? Yep. Son of a bitch.
Gran Turismo 7. Alan Wake 2.
The text is about us.
We were all trapped in a horror story.
Returnal. Returnal is one of those games that totally throws you into the deep end. You're immediately thrust into a cycle of death and rebirth. Every time you die, you wake up at the crash site, but the world around you has changed, like it's shifting in response to your every move. It's quite intense and mind-bending. One minute, you're running through these lush alien forests, the next you're deep inside some creepy structures. The game combines roguelike elements with a third-person shooter, so you're constantly learning from your mistakes. It's punishing, but in a way that keeps you hooked. The shooting is slick, with fast-paced combat that really pushes you to stay on your toes. You're dealing with alien creatures that feel like they're straight out of a nightmare. Each death feels like a fresh challenge, and there's a real sense of progression with every loop. Returnal is a mix of sci-fi mystery and psychological horror. The narrative unfolds in pieces, and as you dig deeper into the character's journey, it gets stranger and more thought-provoking. It's not your typical straightforward story, but one that keeps you questioning everything. And if I'm being honest, the difficulty can be a bit overwhelming at times. You'll get moments where you feel like you've got it, and then you get absolutely wrecked by a random encounter. But that's part of what makes it so satisfying when you finally overcome a tough area or boss. It's all about learning the ropes, mastering your gear, and figuring out how to handle the unpredictable. Returnal's a bit of a love it or hate it game, but for those who stick with it, the payoff is worth it. It's a challenging ride that feels like an experience.